Let me first off say, Mac, you look terrible.
Oh, well, thank you, Goo. I can pay that right back to you. You look homeless.
Oh, I am wearing this is a Feed the Homeless shirt. So,
Isn't it
yes.
really?
Yeah, it's good.
Well, you wearing a bland sweatshirt. You're not shaven. Your hair doesn't look great. You. I might look bad, but you look homeless.
So, the reason why you look bad is because you shaved your mustache.
I did.
You have gone against the family. I would kiss you right on the mouth right now and, tell you that I'm going to kill you in a couple days, but you're not going to be around in a couple days because you are going to go to sunny, beautiful, there's enough daytime to go around Hawaii.
Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I wanted that mustache to last in pictures forever, so I went ahead and shaved it before my trip to Hawaii. But I definitely don't look better. I'll tell you that.
And speaking of us not having, sunlight during the day anymore, daylight saving time.
Yeah, sure.
We were given an hour and it pushes the sunlight towards the morning as opposed to the end of the day.
Hate
But
that.
what it also does is for those of us who have young children and animals, pretty much the exact same thing, we are still on the old clock because children do not accept the extra hour of sleep. And I am just getting up at like 5 a.m. every day.
And because of when we jump back, we lose like 2 or 3 more minutes of sunlight every day. It almost feels like that after a week, even though we only jump back an hour, it feels like we lost 2 hours of sunlight at the end of the day.
Like, I would say, without it being the holiday season, if not for us, for everyone putting up their Christmas trees early, this would be the most depressing time of the year, without a doubt.
Who needs sunlight at 6:30 a.m.? You don't need it. I would prefer it at 6:30 p.m.
No, because I'll tell you this right now, as a father. Can I speak as a father?
Sure. You have the floor.
Yes. So my 3-year-old son, it's easier for me to tell him to stay in bed if it's still dark outside. I
Right,
can say,
right.
hey, it's still dark. We need to be sleeping. But if the sun is beginning to creep up, he's going to say, no, daddy, you shut up.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's missing. He sees the sunlight. There's definitely something going on that he's missing.
Yeah.
So,
and here we are. Look at me. I look like a fucking homeless person.
One, goo, 3, yeah! Goo. Jaws 3. Goo. King of Queens. Goo. Meryl Streep. Goo. Entertainment.
I'm Goo.
and I'm Mac.
And here we are chasing our own tails or swallowing our own tails. What are we doing with our tails?
I don't know. So
We're a snake.
To be clear, that was a leading takeaway or a leading thought after episode 5, but I think we have some pretty firm clarity on that situation after episode 6.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this right now. So we're going to talk about Loki season 2. And I love the amount of detail, intricacy, foreshadowing that they do in this series. It could have been shorter.
The second and third episodes felt like we wasted a little bit of time, but by the end of episode 4, I was a little confused in the middle of the last 3 episodes, but I really liked what we got in the last 3 episodes.
Let me say this, and we'll get into all the nuts and bolts. We'll get into our hot dog scores. We'll get into our octagon. I'm going to tell you this right off the bat. If this was a 2.5-hour movie that came off the back of Loki season 1, I think this would have been the best MCU movie since Endgame. If it was a tight 2.5 hours.
Not to copy everyone's taglines for everything ever.
No, but I gave Endgame a 40 hot dog. I'm not going to say this is a 41 dog.
You think that if this was tighter, it'd be better than Guardians 3?
I think if they made it, and like the last 3 episodes, there's a heavy focus on Loki. So if there was the heavy focus on Loki, if they tightened the first 3 episodes into, say, 45 minutes, and then they gave us that great ending, I think this would have been better than Guardians 3. Yes.
Okay, and to be clear, Goo and I are pretty high on Loki season 1. We have it as the
love Loki season
MCU
1.
show. We both have it in our top 10s, I think, too, on MCU overall. So we are pretty high on this property in general. And that's a conversation actually we could have right now, Goo. So Loki, season 2 is TV. Loki season 2 is a TV 14 rated show out on Disney Plus right now.
Mhm.
Goo, this is in fact the 41st entry into the MCU, and the 9th season of television into the entry, the 9th season of television that we've had in the MCU. But how should we treat it, Goo? Because technically it's still under the Loki umbrella. So
Yeah.
are we treating season 1 and season 2 differently, or is it all under the same umbrella?
I would say all under the same umbrella because it happens right after the first season. And you can even just look at it as one 12 episode series because they're not going to do a season 3. This is for 12 episodes. Like they talk about the snake eating its own tail. That's how it starts and that's how it ends. It's perfect.
Yeah, if you want to go by letterboxed rules, you can only
Yeah.
rate Loki in general. You can't do a season 1, season 2
Yeah.
split. But I almost feel like you could treat this like a sequel to a movie, like we do for most things here, and rank it as such. But
Yeah, and if this was a sequel to the first season, which it technically is, it's season 2, and the first one was only supposed to be a series, so like a mini series with the 6 episodes, but did really well. As a sequel to it, granted, like I don't love all the other characters around Loki. I'm not attached to
you
them
put
per
some
se.
respect on OB's name.
I was gonna say, I love Obi. He's a great side character, great comedic relief.
Mobius is great too.
I'm getting to Mobius. I really like Mobius too. But you have that space, once Loki, he's time slipping in episode 1, but then you have the 2 episodes after that just kind of meander. And we don't really get into the good stuff once again, like the good Loki stuff once again until the final couple episodes.
All right, save that. That's not really
And
what
you
we're
could
talking
have
about right now.
Okay, but also like you could have done
Save it.
that,
Save
but
that.
you could have done that. Let's
Save
get
that.
the gang back together. That could have been 20 minutes of a movie.
Save that conversation.
I'm sorry. I'm just so excited to talk about a pretty good MCU property.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how we as a podcast should rate it, Goo. Like, to me, it's a clear continuation of the story and the themes in season
Yes.
1.
Yeah.
However, a lot of the movie sequels are as well. And we do get a pretty satisfying conclusion at the end of season 1.
The last episode,
I would be good with doing it either way. And Goo, if you compare it to how we talked about the Marvel Netflix stuff, we separated those by seasons.
You're right. But this one also feels like the most of a continuation out of all those.
Yeah, and to that point, the finale episode in season 2 is titled the same name
I was
as
trying to say that the last 3 minutes, and you wouldn't let me get a word.
Glorious Purpose is season 1,
Which-
episode 1, season 2,
so,
episode 6.
I know that we're jumping around a lot here, but the show also, I'm time slipping around this episode. Don't mind me. Time keeps on slipping
Slipping into the future.
And
into
also the distant past.
future.
The Goocher, thank you. This has an incredibly satisfying ending to me.
You know what, Goo? I agree with you. Episode 5 was losing me a little bit. As we were time slipping, my interest was
Like
slipping.
I just said, episode 5, getting the gang back together, could have been 20 minutes of a movie.
It
15
lost
minutes
me a
of a
little
movie.
bit, and
Yeah.
it confused me a little bit. But episode 6, if my erection was going down, I got full chub in episode 6. It was both a satisfying conclusion for the
Yes.
viewer and for the character of Loki. I really liked that closing shot.
Okay, so first off, it felt too strange like at first, but then they had a divergent timeline that went elsewhere and it made it awesome. Awesome. And it's
I agree.
like
They saved it.
Hiddleston is so good at this character.
Yeah.
Like looking back at it, Loki's been around for a very, very long time. This character has been around for so long, and they've evolved this character so well.
Yeah, we used to talk about how Thor probably had the biggest transformation in the MCU, but it's definitely Loki.
Yeah. To the
Which is
point
impressive.
of, and I don't know if this is his last property, if he'll be in Secret Invasion, if he'll be in but like, he's kind of the linchpin now.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things. So before we jump into nuts and bolts real quick, we talked about last week in News Dump, the tweet from someone talking about how the MCU is fucked because now they can't use Kane going forward because of what happens in the Loki finale. I have two thoughts on that, but I think that person is so far off because I'll give you half of my thought here.
Yeah.
This was clearly planned from the beginning of season 1 of Loki, what they
Yeah.
did here. So we got swerved as MCU viewers hard. We bought so hard into Kang, and they had a very clear plan from the beginning, aside from Jonathan Majors stuff. Now, I think that helps them do a little bit of a swerve here, and I'm trying to remain as spoiler-free as possible. But they had a very clear thought in mind when they began this series, and it didn't have anything to do with Jonathan Majors.
Also, like, I don't want to spoil, but I don't see how they're fucked with the Kang situation.
I agree. So we'll save that for spoilers.
Because
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't change what happened in season 1.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't change much of anything other than like one storyline, but that's it. So that tweet and that person is a fucking moron.
If anything, it makes it more interesting.
For sure. I agree.
It makes it more interesting.
It opens up more possibilities.
Do the nuts and bolts as quickly as possible because I want to get back into this. You know what? This show, although once again, whole thing didn't exactly do it for me, very interesting. And it didn't have the episode by episode intrigue that say WandaVision did for me, but by the end it was getting close.
Yeah, we can talk about that coming up in a minute here. So, Loki season 2 is an action, adventure, and fantasy, and I think we should just decide to review this separately from season 1 and rank it separately from season 1.
Yes.
6 episodes with a total runtime of 323 minutes. That's roughly 54 minutes an episode, so just under 6 hours, in between 5 and 6 hours of television here. On Rotten Tomatoes. Now, this begins this conversation, sort of what you're getting into. 82% from the critics, 76% from the audience. Now, in comparison, season 1 got a 92-90 split.
Yeah.
Overall, this being the 9th season of MCU television, this is the 3rd worst audience score, and I do not agree at all.
I think the audience is just kind of soured on these properties. I think that's all it is.
That's 100% what it is. For reference, Loki season 1, 90%, Hawkeye 89%, Moon Knight 89%, WandaVision 88%, Falcon and Winter Soldier at 82%. Above this is crazy. Miss Marvel 80%, I sort of get, but I liked that more than most. And then of course you have the bottom dwellers there, Secret Invasion at 48% and She-Hulk at 32%. Go on Metacritic. They're sort of echoing the same thing that the audience is saying. So I think it's just a general fatigue here. This has a 65. Season 1 had a 74, which ranks 3rd amongst the 9. Miss Marvel 78, WandaVision 77, Falcon and Winter Soldier also 74. And then the bottom 3, other than this, are actually Moon Knight at a nice 69. You have She-Hulk 67, Hawkeye 66. Both of those above this. Secret Invasion 63. So I think it's clear that there's a general fatigue from everyone.
Well,
not us though.
I'll also say that I wasn't really all in on the Sylvie story. I wasn't all in on the Renslayer story. The Miss Minute stuff was intriguing, but also didn't really do anything by the end. So, they do try and give you other characters, but the focus on Loki is really where it's at.
I agree with you. I do feel like now I sort of forgave it the first couple episodes, but I do feel like Sylvie's wasted most of this season.
Yeah.
And as meaningful as Miss Minutes and Renslayer are early on, there's no real payoff at the end of that for those characters.
The only payoff that you get is a story that Mobius tells at the end. Once again, that
great story though.
It's a great tie back. That's all.
Yeah, but also builds out those two characters and their relationship a little bit more, which I very much enjoyed.
Also, very just upsetting ending with Mobius for me. Just
like a tear upsetting.
Not a tear, but as I think about it, it gives me. It's not the shivers. What the fuck are the shivers? I'm not cold, Mac. But it's one of those things where it's I would hate. We'll do it in spoilers. Bring it back up in spoilers.
Okay.
I don't want to give anything away.
Put a pin in the Mobius conversation.
I'm going to put it in the notes.
This show is created by Michael Waldron. He also, of course, did season 1, so a continuation there. Since season 1, he was one of the 2 writers on Multiverse of Madness, which obviously didn't go all that well. He was notable. He worked on Rick and Morty. He was a production assistant on Community. I think that's how Feige kind of brought him into this fold. He also wrote the show in the 2 years Heels, which has done pretty well.
Yeah.
And going forward, Goo, Waldron has signed on to do the untitled Feige Star Wars project, which was announced like
Yeah, he's
3
not
years
doing it
ago.
though. Yeah, he's not doing it anymore. Feige said he's out on Star Wars.
Feige's out.
Yeah, well, Feige said his Star Wars thing is not happening.
Okay, Waldron's still attached to it on IMDb, so who
There
knows?
are no more Star Wars movies. Get over it, Mac.
Waldron is also attached, Goo, which is very interesting, and we can talk about this in spoilers. Avengers Secret Wars. So again, I think they had a very clear plan going through this series, separate from the Jonathan Majors stuff. Goo, new writer brought on for this season, separate from season 1, had nothing to do with season 1, at least credits wise. Eric Martin, who co-created and wrote Heels with Waldron, and also worked with Waldron on Rick and Morty and Community. So obviously a writing partner that he
Let
likes
me
to
ask
work
you,
with.
do you think this season is funnier than season 1?
I don't know.
I think it
I don't
attempts
know.
more though. It attempts to be
Bringing
a little
OB
bit
into the
sillier.
mix definitely
Yeah.
helps. And then there was some real hijinks at the beginning of the finale, which I actually kind of like.
Yeah, and I mean,
Groundhog
like
Day situation.
Episode 3 is very it's kind of goofy. It's kind of silly.
Yeah, I agree. Waldron also gets a credit on 4 or 5 of the episodes, and Catherine Blair does 3 or 4 of the episodes as well. Goo, the 4 best episodes of the season were 1, 4, 5, and 6. Those episodes were all directed by the same people, Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson. The other 2 episodes had 2 new directors. I don't think it's the director's fault that those episodes are probably the 2 worst. It's just the source
I think it's just the
material and
filler. I
writing.
think that's just how they decided to tell the story. That's
I
all.
agree. Also to note here, Goo, and I don't remember if this was the case for season 1, but Tom Hiddleston is now an executive producer on this show, which obviously is a I think that's how you keep these guys coming back, is elevating
And
them
look,
to those
like,
things.
we're losing a lot of the original characters. I think he is someone that you want to try and keep around for as long as possible.
I agree, Goo, with the transformation of this character and what
Yeah.
he probably means going forward. It's worth keeping him around, and he's been phenomenal doing it.
But also how he can transition this entire universe into other characters. And what this character can now do. Like, that's a really interesting story to be told.
For sure. And because they've built him up from villain to anti-hero to quasi-hero, we're rooting for him. So it's really weird how that will play in.
But also hero, but also someone that could slip back into doing some bad stuff.
Yeah, there's potential for that as well, no doubt. Goo, because this season is still attached to season 1, there's no synopsis to be found. So I wrote a little diddly.
Can you make up some words and tell me?
Goo, synopsis. Loki must deal with the fallout of Sylvie killing He Who Remains in the season 1 finale. Branch timelines and variants are jeopardizing the TVA, the sacred timeline, and the very existence of Loki himself. Thought that's a decent enough summation of what goes on here. Goo, this show stars Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Sophia DiMartino as Sylvie, Owen Wilson as Mobius, Wunmi Mosaku as Hunter B-15, who plays a much bigger role in this season than she did in season 1, Gugu and Batha Ra as Ravana Renslayer, Eugene Cordero as Casey, who also plays a bigger role, Tara Strong as Miss Minutes. They introduced Ki-Hu Kwan as Obi Oborius, I believe his name was. Jonathan Majors returns as He Who Remains and also plays Victor Timely. Obviously the same character, but variants. Raphael Casal as Brad Wolf / Hunter X5. And Kate Dickey, another notable character here, is General Docs. She's the character that is still trying to play out He Who Remains' plan in the middle of the season there.
Yes. So any thoughts before we get into the Octagon? I think we've already kind of gotten into our spoiler-free thoughts as we've really tipped into possibly spoiling.
Yeah, I the only thing I'll say is it's hard to review this on the whole. So I think keeping it separate is the way to go. So let's do that.
Fun factor. How fun was this show? And like I've kind of mentioned, I think the journey with Loki was the funnest part.
Yeah, there's not a ton of fun in here. However, seeing him jump back and slip to places is kind of fun. And also, I think just a built-in science fiction thing when you're talking about like science that we don't understand is kind of fun. And then every time Ki-Hu Kwan's involved is fun. So there's like fun throughout, but it's not outright fun.
Satisfactor. And like I mentioned earlier, I was really satisfied by this ending. And I also, like I said, I would like to see more of this character, but if this is the last time we see him, I'm okay with it. I just want more.
I agree with you. And I was a little down on this show after the end of episode 5. I didn't know
Yeah.
what we were going to get. And I'll tell you, I was very satisfied by the conclusion of this show for a multitude of reasons. But the main one is where the Loki character is left off. And that final shot I thought was great. I thought it was awesome.
Borometer, yes, it does tick quite a bit, but they also were laying down so many layers of the foreshadowing. Everything that they have in the TVA is done with so much detail. And if you pay attention to all of it, I'm sure it's telling us more stories, it's more Easter eggs. Go and check out New Rockstars. I'm sure they have some great breakdowns of that. That's not what we're here for.
No, we don't have all that time.
But
on our
yeah, there
hands.
was a little bit of bore.
Yeah, I agree. Episodes 2, 3, and a little bit of 4. When we're trying to figure out where it's going, and they're spending a lot of time with Timely and way back when there was some bore there for sure.
Halloween. Will our interest wane over time? And actually, after I finished this season, so I finished it last night, and I've been thinking about it a lot the last couple hours. My wife still has not seen Loki season 1.
Mhm.
I want to restart the series and watch it all over again with her, like now.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Having them run together instead of taking 2 years off or whatever there was
Mhm.
between here. Um, it's almost always like a wait and see with the MCU at this point for
Yeah.
Halloween. Like this could mean more, it could mean less. I have a feeling it's going to mean a lot going forward. So I don't really feel like it's going to wane.
Pants Tent City. Excite Bike Mania. What got you going from the show?
I feel like the show was lacking a big pants tent moment until the finale, and we got
Mhm.
one in the finale, at least in my eyes. When you see that Loki character taking those steps and that cape
Yeah.
forming,
All right, stop.
I thought that was
Yeah.
fucking awesome.
I will say, though, I think the pants tent, the Excite Bike Mania of season 1 might have been a little bit higher because there was so
For
much
sure. No,
intrigue of what
definitely.
could happen after that. But this was
That
very, very
that
satisfying.
whole because of the way it was set up and the cheese behind it, I felt
Yeah.
like the whole season 1 finale was a pants tent. That's not the case here, but it did reach a decent pants tent.
Max Credit Union. Who are you giving credit to?
It's hard to give it to anyone but Tom Hiddleston as Loki because he really carries this show. It's like I don't know how to just it's like an 07 Cavs thing. It's
Mhm.
LeBron and a bunch of not so good players, and it's sort of what's happening here. The other characters are decent. I love OB, I love Mobius, but meaningfully, it's just Loki. Sylvie doesn't do much. You know what? Actually, Majors is Kang or Majors is Timely. I really like as well, but it's so heavily Loki centric that
Yes.
he really is putting up a LeBron like effort here.
Especially in that final episode.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
final episode it's so fun factor. Actually, that's really fun. That final episode is really
It's a great
fun.
episode. Great
It
episode.
is. I'd also like to give credit once. I know I've been saying, I don't love a couple of these episodes here. It could have been tighter, but what they do of building out the TVA, what they do of putting all these Easter eggs, everything else in there, like they do deserve credit for that.
Yeah, and the characters in general, even though it's heavily on Loki for what actually happens,
Yeah.
because Mobius is so likable, because OB is so likable,
Mhm.
the whole runtime, you're still enjoying what you're watching.
And like Miss Minutes had me really intrigued for a very short
True.
amount of time.
That's true as well. Yeah.
Just like me. Couple minutes and I'm done. For those of you tardy to the Mac and Goo party, we rate everything on a 40 hot dog rating system. And Mac, like I've already said, I would have loved a tighter 2.5 hour movie. I think this would have been, from start to finish, almost perfect from what you got from season 1. But I do feel like they meandered a bit in the first half of the season, but it does all come to, I think, a great conclusion, especially if this is the last time we see Loki or if we get more out of this character. It's really open-ended. It could go either way. I'm kind of fine either way with it, but the evolution of this character, Hiddleston as this character, I love. So I'm at 34 hot dogs, but I could be pushed to 35.
Motherfucker. Or just seemingly in the same range these days, Goo. So I'm right on that 33, 34 line here, Goo. If we're treating it as just the one season separate from season
Yeah.
1, I think I got it 33, 34. I could be talked up to 34. in that like 25 to 27 range, but maybe
Yeah.
it's up a little higher than that. I'd have to reassess all that. If you want to, if you're a listener at home saying no, counted it all as one. If you fold it into the first season of Loki, if you combine, say, 33 and 37, which is what I have the first season at, it's a 35, and that drops Loki from 9th on my list to like the 13 to 18 range. That's all 35. But if
I guess
if
I'd
I
be
do
around
give it
36 then.
34,
Yeah.
if I do give it 34 instead of 33, you could argue it in the top 20. It's just there is a little bit of a bore, and I don't think I was let down by the end of the season. I'm let down with what Sylvie means, though. It seems like that's my major gripe so Sylvie's the linchpin for season 1, and she's pretty meaningless in season 2.
I mean, she does push him towards what he does.
Yeah, but so do the other 6 characters. You know, they're all sort of one and the same.
Yeah,
at that point.
Ross, Rachel, Joey, Chandler, Monica, Phoebe, they all push
Loki
Loki.
did this in honor of Chandler.
I know this has nothing to do with the show Loki, but I keep thinking about Paul Rudd telling the story of when Friends wrapped, and he kept on going up to people that had been there for like 225 episodes. He's like, guys, we did it. And he was on like 13 episodes.
I loved that. I actually read a little fun fact because all these Friends stuff has been coming out after Chandler passed. His character of Mike was only supposed to be in a couple episodes, but the writers loved him so much that that's who they made Phoebe marry. Because originally she was supposed to marry the Hank Azaria character, whose name I forget. But I love that everyone just loves Paul Rudd. That he's inevitable.
Is it my turn for a Friends fun fact?
Yeah, go.
I've been watching, TikTok showed me this.
Sure.
Is, Matthew Perry had a Batman room in his house.
Oh, okay. So is Matthew Perry going up your Friends rankings based on this?
I think so. He had a full room that was wall-to-wall Batman statues.
Oh, statues.
Yeah,
well,
like
that's a little
statues.
bizarre. In glass cases?
Like glass cases, like big built-out Batmans. He even said, he was like, yeah, people don't know what to get me anymore, so they just get me Batman shit.
It's sort of like you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's me.
It's you, that, and Turtles, so you're a little lesser of a Batman guy, but I respect that.
All right, Max, shall we start spoiling?
Spoilers.
Okay, so let me get into the Mobius thing for a second.
Yeah.
His character ends with, so he goes back where he was kind of taken from, and he's able to now let time pass.
Yeah.
And he essentially gets to watch himself raise his kids.
Yeah. So there's a moment in this, in episode 5, and now I don't think does Mobius remember jumping back? I don't know. I guess that's not even worth talking about, but in the after part of the finale, it's not even a post credit. It's, what's it called?
It's a part of the show. It's a part
prologue?
of the show. Yeah.
It's sort of an epilogue, prologue, whatever the one that comes at the end.
That's a nice big log.
We see Mobius go back to see what his life was on the sacred timeline.
Yeah.
And he's sort of longing for it. I don't know if he has regret.
No,
but he's intrigued by what that would have been.
No, I think he does quite a bit, because
all right.
May I speak as a father real quick? I know that you can't comprehend this,
Yeah.
but if I had to watch myself raise my son, I feel like that would be really difficult.
Well, so I don't think he stays there.
No, but I'm just like, but even if he spends a little bit of time there, he's going to let some time pass.
Yeah.
But if I had to watch myself and then critique what I was doing, like it's tough.
Well, part of it too is he's been with the TVA for so long.
Yeah.
That time is no longer a construct for him. So he hasn't experienced time passing really ever until he goes back onto the sacred timeline to watch what his life was.
Yeah.
So I think he's also trying to wrap his mind around time as a construct, because all of these TVA characters don't experience time at all. They're the same always. So that's like a whole underneath layer that the show deals with a little bit, but when you really think about that, that's pretty fucked up.
Okay. Yeah. So just episodes 1, 2, and 3. First episode, we're dealing with the time slipping. He's going back with his original characters. He's learning more about the TVA. But then episode 2, we get the pruning of the branches.
Right.
And I feel like episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Loki getting back to the TVA, the pruning of the branches, and then us going to get Timely, that's a very good start to a movie. That's a very good 40 minutes of a movie.
Good first act.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. It just went on a little too long. And then once we get like towards the episode three into episode 4, and they're getting into like saving the loom and
Yeah.
Timely's technology marrying with OBs, it gets a little muddied down. And also, so then you get to episode 5, and it gets confusing because
Yeah.
now you're getting into what you were talking about at the beginning, the snake eating its tail. So does Obi and Loki create the TVA? Like it's all cyclical, and you don't
Now Loki has created the TVA.
and you can't really point to who's doing what and what means what. And then they're also trying to, and I think it does land at the end, but in episode 5, it's like Loki just wants friends. And you're like, all right.
He
I'm
wants to
sort of-
watch Friends.
he like his motivation is that he just wants his friends at the TVA to be all right, kind of. And I don't know if I really buy it in episode 5, but by episode 6, I think I do. But it gets muddied down a little bit for sure. And then you get into all the science fiction stuff and the technology, and you just sort of don't get it. But what I did like, and it's something that at least I figured was going to happen from the jump, when Loki starts time slipping, at some point he's going to be able to grasp that and master it and make it an ability. So that's what happens in episode 5. He jumps into the timelines of everyone at the TVA and figures out where they've been. And we find out OB is a science fiction writer as well as a professor, and his at-home workshop basically resembles his TVA workshop.
Yes.
I like the parallels there.
Mhm.
We find out Mobius is a father of 2 and a jet ski salesman, and he just lives a pretty normal life, pretty simple
Father
life.
of 2 sons, much like how he could not take out one of the kids who then kills 5,000 people.
Yes. Yep. And there's also parallels there with Loki and Thor being the 2 sons of
Yeah.
Odin. We find out Casey is essentially Frank Lee Morris, who is the Clint Eastwood character from Escape from Alcatraz, based on a true story.
Mhm.
Escape from Alcatraz. That was, I don't know. That was almost a shark jumping moment for me.
It was kind
not
of
great.
annoying too, and there is I didn't steal it.
We find out B-15 is like a doctor pediatrician,
Mhm.
which is I didn't really care for that either. So that's what I'm talking about. Like episode 5 was sort of, I was coming down. The chub was becoming a quarter chub instead of a half chub. It also felt like Sylvie, by episode 5, we really feel like Sylvie's being wasted because I don't really understand her motivations anymore. What does she want? Does she just want to live?
She wants freedom
anonymous life?
from the timeline. She
So
wants
she just wants to-
freedom, yes, from
wants to live in
everything being determined for them.
She wants to live an anonymous life,
Yeah.
but in order to do that, she now has to save the TVA. So that's her motivation.
And that's why she does not want a sacred timeline. That's why she does not want the pruning and bringing back to what He Who Remains had.
And episode 5 is so heavy on character stuff
Yeah.
and building out our characters, but it really lacks Renslayer and Miss Minutes. We don't get either of them in this episode.
But I will say in episode 6, when he barges in the door, he's like, I need that guy. That was actually a really funny response by them. I'm like, oh?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
My takeaway from episode 5 before we get into the finale, it felt like, and I was the internet stuff was chatter starting to get to me a little bit. It felt like this season was simply in place to save the temporal loom so that the TVA could stay in place for Deadpool 3. Now I don't feel like that anymore, but coming away from episode 5, that's what I felt like this was. It felt like this was serving a purpose for Deadpool, and now I no longer feel that.
Right, but now that Loki is the god of stories, he is Loki who remains. That pretty much now tells me that by him taking all these new timelines that he has control of, and he can tell his own stories in, that's where the mutants come from. That's where the Fantastic Four come from. He's taken all these new timelines that Sylvie created, and he's kept them alive.
Yeah, I guess that's essentially what happens at the end here. And I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be like a poisoning moment for his character to be not so good anymore, but we'll get to that in a second. So the finale, Glorious Purpose, again, the same title as the first episode from season 1.
Although, sorry, just to stop you for 1 second, I I would love, and we're not sure if Hemsworth is still here, if he's done with it, but I would love to just see really quick Loki and Thor back on the screen together real quick, just so that Thor can be proud of his brother and who he's turned into.
Yeah, do you think there's gonna be a moment down the line where they're gonna free Loki from that burden?
I'm not sure, but I also really thought in this episode there was gonna be a quick jump back to when he was on Asgard. Like a
Okay.
quick thing of maybe him with his family.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there was definitely a moment they could have
Because he
put that in
kept
there.
jumping back further and further, but then
Yeah.
he's like, "No, I gotta go do my job."
I think though that is the difference between 2012 Loki and the Loki that dies in
Yeah.
Infinity War. That's probably the difference right there. So we start the finale jumping back to timely sacrifice, and we get a whole Groundhog Day type of thing.
Mhm.
And now Loki has fully mastered the time slipping,
But
and
once
he's
again, it does resemble the Dormammu scene of Doctor Strange going
yep,
back and forth over and
yep.
over again. And we even get all this green magic, which is much like, obviously, the Eye of Agamotto. So that at first, I'm like, oh, this is cool, but we've kind of seen this. But then they go further.
Yeah, and on top of that, the main difference once we get to episode 6 is he's no longer jumping his body into the time and place. So there's two Lokis. He's jumping into the Loki's body from that time and place, which
Yes.
is a massive improvement from the time slipping, which is obviously how this whole episode plays out. We see like the timely stuff, they actually make it work, but it doesn't actually work. And then we get uh, Loki jumping back to the season 1 episode,
Yes.
the season 1 finale, where him and Sylvie are fighting, and you get sort of another Groundhog Day moment. But then you get a really cool scene, which is sort of another pants tent here. Kang realizes that Loki's time slipping, and he finally stops him, and they have a great conversation, great dialogue, great scene.
Yeah, and Loki does not want to kill Sylvie. He just wants to convince her, diplomacy, to not kill this variant or not kill He Who Remains. And that's when, he slips in. He's like, look, everything that happens, it's just going to happen. And I don't mind being killed. Reincarnation.
Yeah, and I think we sort of forgot about this because they make it pretty clear in season 1 that
Yeah.
this temporal loom is just in place to protect He Who Remains and really
Yeah.
no one else. So just that one timeline, the sacred timeline, and that loom is just protecting He Who Remains. And maybe knew that as audience members and viewers,
Mhm.
but Loki finally realizes that in this episode. So he's fighting a losing battle, and he has a great line in here. He goes, "I'll change the equation. I'll break
Well,
your
yeah, he
loom."
looks at a giant whiteboard and he's like, how you like those apples?
So then he slips back into his original TVA like intake interview with
Yeah.
Mobius from the beginning of season 1, and Mobius is talking about the big picture. And another great quote: Mobius says, "Most purpose is more burden than glory." And
Yeah.
Loki is realizing there's no glory at the end of this story for me, at least not at the moment. It's gonna be a burden to do what I have to do. So then Loki slips back into the timely sacrifice, that time and place.
Mhm.
And he goes out there and starts, sort of doing this like,
Trudging through.
yeah, this great little walk.
Where a lot of the colors are kind of like the Bifrost.
Yeah, true. And there's a great shot of him walking on this Bifrost type bridge where his cloak or his disguise is getting wiped away and the horns and the cape are coming back.
Mhm.
And then it continues when he explodes the loom, when he rips open the loom, which I thought was cool. All these branches almost come to life and look less science fictiony and look more like alive and like
Yeah.
they're like moving more. And he grabs on to one of these branches and they look like they're dying. And he uses some green Loki magic and like
Mhm.
ignites it, reinvigorates it. And he does that with all these branches as he's walking along. And there's a really cool shot of the branches becoming one with Loki's cape, which is fucking so cool looking. Now,
Yeah.
I bet that's probably straight out of the comics. We obviously haven't read the comics, but that's really cool. And it's a really cool visual. And it seems like we're getting this god of stories, Loki, right?
Yeah, and there were a couple really good lines in the like one-liners in the last couple episodes where like Sylvie telling Loki we aren't gods and Loki pausing, no, we are gods.
Right.
And
right.
like
And
and you're like, oh,
they
he's gonna
forget
do
that
something. Yeah,
sometimes.
he's
Yeah.
gonna do something godly here. And then the glorious purpose, all that stuff, like that it fed in really well.
Yep. And then they have this great shot of Loki
Mhm.
sitting on the throne, closing in close on his eyes, and then it flips to show that it's no longer left to right, up and down, and it looks like
A tree.
roots of a tree
Yeah.
and then branches of a tree, which is much more optimistic and less Kane killer type
I
stuff.
could be wrong. Is that an Asgardian like logo symbol thing
Oh, I'm
too?
not sure.
I'm
Right.
not sure either.
Right.
I'm not gonna say that it is. I'm just throwing it out there. We're like, it might be.
So then it cuts to the after this
Mhm.
epilogue I think it's epilogue. I think
Sorry,
prologue's
before the
before,
epilogue,
epilogue's after.
before your big log at the end here.
Yeah.
I think the funniest part of the series might have been when he was time slipping and finishing people's sentences
Yeah.
and like, let's try this again. And Moby's
I
like,
agree.
again.
Yeah, I get what?
Yeah.
I really like the shot too of them watching Loki ascend, and they're all in the shadows.
Yeah.
So you just see the outlines of them. That was a great shot. The cinematography and the last like 15 minutes of the show was fucking phenomenal. So we get to this after part. And again, instead of left to right, the loom now goes bottom, top, bottom, however you want to say it, but it resembles a tree, branches and roots. And now Miss Minutes is helping. Is Miss Minutes over Kang and He Who Remains?
Has she been reset?
I don't know. That's a question that is remaining to be answered. So that could play into it. And then you have B15 asking Mobius, any Kang variants? Do any Kang variants know we exist yet?
Mhm.
And he references the Quantumania Kang
Yes.
that gets taken care of. We see OB with the second edition TVA guidebook, which does not make it into the hands of Victor Timely. So they cut off the Timely timeline. He no longer means what he was supposed to mean. Then we see Renslayer in the pruned world, and it looks like that's where Aloith still is. There's no real clarification there. Is she just destined to remain there forever?
I don't know. Maybe she's done. Who knows?
Of course, we talked about Mobius going to see what his life was like. And it seems like Sylvie, I guess, can just relax and bop around as she seems fit.
Yeah, I mean, Loki's in charge now. She can do whatever
I
she
know
wants.
it just seems Sylvie's wasted now, which is a
Yeah.
bummer. But
Because I don't think she ever like would she come back in one of the Avenger movies coming up? I don't even think so.
I don't think she would. But
Yeah.
Loki looks at peace here, Goo, in the after. It looks like he knows it's a burden, but he looks at peace, which I think is a pretty fitting end for this character, at least for now. Maybe there's a to be continued. But Goo, what I want to get to is in reference to that tweet talking about Kang and how the MCU's fucked now. Number one, where are we left with Kang? What do you think happens with Kang going forward? Because obviously Timely doesn't become the central character that he was, but there are still Kang variants out there that we're worried about, or at least the TVA is worried about.
So I think that they're still going to play a part, but their job now is just to keep track of these guys.
Okay. Because to me, it seems like their end game was Loki becoming God of Stories all along. So they are not fucked with a swerve from Kang to something else here. In fact, I felt like now, with having stepping back and seeing what this was, Kang was really a great foil for Loki and making Loki whole through this series. And I don't mind at all that they're swerving from Kang because the Kang buildup came from the Loki show. Like it's sort of, it doesn't matter all that much to me. And it does truly open up the MCU to a villain like Doctor Doom. And that's not because they have to swerve to Kang. It's intentional. I think this Kang stuff was all intentional to get Loki to where he needed to be. And now this opens it up to a Doom-like villain.
But I also think this doesn't kill, if you want to do more with Kang, you can still do more with Kang.
For sure. It's just that whoever tweeted that, whoever got that info to that person who tweeted it is a moron. They're stupid.
Because
this is so clearly planned.
If they had done it where Loki kills Sylvie so that she does not kill He Who Remains, then you could be like, wait, are we shifting back towards this one?
Right. That would have felt lazy.
That's the ending of season 1 still happened.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know what people are missing here. I mean, maybe they're disappointed they don't get to see some Kang variants battle it out, but that might still happen.
Yeah.
There's still a lot on the table. To me, this is a better conclusion to anything I had thought up or anything that this was maybe leading to.
You didn't write a better ending?
No, this is better than anything I had pictured, even though it was teased a little bit. New Rockstars was talking about God of Stories and whatnot, but I didn't know what that character is. So I just really like where this show leaves Loki
Yeah.
and the characters and the MCU. The MCU is wide open for the taking. And of course, Loki's, I guess, in charge of everything. He's at the end of time sort of stuff. But I don't know how much he can affect things now.
I hope he can. I hope he can. So I give this season 34. Season 1 was a 38. Overall, Loki, the 12 episodes, 36.
Yeah, I might be a tig below you there. A twitch. Is that none of those are the words I'm looking for?
No, stop.
I think I'm 33, 34 this season. I can't, maybe it'll lean 34 after I'm thinking about it more. I just really like where it ends.
Let's get into Max.
And Max Act could be anything. It could be a boat. And Mac, first off, I have yet to see the Marvels. I'll be seeing that over the weekend. We'll talk about that next Goose Day. By the way, and we talked about this too. This is the first MCU property, movie-wise, that I have not seen either opening night or sooner since 2015.
Yeah, I don't know when it is for me, but it's been a long time for me. That's a little I'm a little disappointed with the higher ups there that are in charge of getting us to those spots.
Yeah, well.
But I still I'm optimistic on what the Marvels is gonna do. And I already know what the post credit is because it's been leaked for fucking 3 weeks, but I'm intrigued as to who's gonna be left going forward here. We haven't seen Monica Rambeau and what is Miss Marvel's name?
Kamala Khan.
We haven't seen them on the big screen yet, and I really liked both of them from their appearances in the MCU prior on the TV side of things. So I'm excited to go see it. Now, I don't think it's going to be a world beater. I don't think it has 40 dog potential, but I don't think it's going to be bad.
So also the acting strike, the SAG acting strike has come to a conclusion, meaning that things can pick up with their productions again. And we now have a new MCU schedule. And of course, these are always subject to change, but it's looking like we're only getting one MCU movie in the year 2024. And that might not be a bad thing. It's going to be Deadpool 3. It's going to be a big tentpole movie. Right? What's up?
I think it's in May.
July 26th.
I thought I read May the other day.
I have it here on Discussing Film.
Yeah, I think we had this conversation before. I still think it's May.
I
think it's January,
yesterday.
Then May.
No, this was released yesterday.
Fuck
so
you.
All right. You know what? Whatever. There's only one movie next year, and I think that might be a good thing. Give everyone a chance to kind of kill a little of this fatigue off. And you're also giving us one that I think everyone wants to see. This is beyond just MCU fans, comic book movie fans. People want to see the Deadpool movie.
Yeah, we've got Echo coming out in January. I don't know what they have planned for the television side of things, but just Deadpool for a movie next year works twofold. Number one, they're going to have to line their ducks up here, and the Marvel people, Kevin Feige, do. Number two, it's going to give the fans a chance to build more intrigue.
Yeah.
So when the market's saturated with stuff, you don't really miss it. Now, if we just get Deadpool next year, it's going to give us a chance to miss things.
For the most part, is after we've seen one of these movies since the start of Phase 4, all we're saying is, all right, what's next?
Yeah.
That's it.
I think that's maybe why people have fatigue. I still enjoy watching these. I'm not going to have anything to watch going forward.
I just want a good story. I just want a nice story. That's all.
I agree with you.
And then in 2025, after you've had your break, you're going to get 4 movies. You're getting Captain America 4, Fantastic Four, Thunderbolts, and Blade.
I mean, those sound like they should all be good. So again, get your ducks in order. Do your Deadpool 3. Fucking swap the timelines. Bring the X-Men in. Bring the Fantastic Four in. And just make it work. Do it right, and we're going to be happy.
Keep it right. Keep it tight.
Get it right. Get it right. Get it tight.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of Mac and Goo. Mac, where can the people find us?
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast. Every other platform, we're Mac ampersand Goo. It's Mac Shift 7 Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. More importantly, we're on what's the green one? Spotify. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Get on Apple Podcasts, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. That's Watertown Sportswear on 34 Mount Auburn Street in Watertown. WatertownSportswear.com, expert screen printing and embroidery.
tpublic.com merch. The holiday season is upon us. Go and buy some shirts from tpublic.com, either Mac and Goose shirts, or I think you should leave shirts from the That's a Chunky handle.
That's chunky.
Go. We'll be back next week.
Yeah, with the Marvels.
Yeah, Marvels.
And then you got to fill an
And
episode.
then I got to do a dump, or I'll do something stupid. We'll see.
There you go.
No, there's a lot of news. I want to dump.
All right. There you go.
All right. So hibbity-bop-bop-ba-da-ba.
Shibba-ba-ba.
Tuesdays or Goose Days, I abuse kangaroos.
Bye.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.